Hello?
Shalom. Did you have, I don't know how much of the conversation you heard, but I pretty much probably would endorse.
Critical's been there for a fair bit.
Oh, nice.
I've been here ever since I just dropped in when Edna said something that I disagreed with, the idea that this isn't a moral conversation. It totally is. It's just kind of separated back a stage where we're talking about normative linguistics and how we ought use language, which is a moral conversation. So I wanted to make that point.
I think Edna would
Pretty
be
clearly.
okay with me steel manning their view because I think they agree with me. There is two parts to this discussion. So the first part, especially with language, it gets kind of tricky, but very similarly to abortion, like you could talk about certain things that are descriptive facts, like you could talk about the biological status of the fetus or something like that. And then you could talk about the fact how that leads you to some conclusion about it being morally or immorally permissible. You agree with that part, right?
Yeah, but fundamentally,
You agree that agree that just having conversation about some of the descriptive facts of the fetus doesn't entail anything moral.
Yes, when you're talking about if you assuming the definitions are agreed upon in the first place of something, you can go through the relationship elements and agree descriptively what's going on the first place.
Well, let's say there's a dispute. So let's say you and I disagree, right? Because I think there being disagreement has nothing to do with the fact. Yes,
or
I agree. I think that there being disagreement in the definition has nothing to do with whether it's moral or not. So if you and I disagree on the biological status of the fetus, I say it's alive, you say it's not, and we start having a dispute over that, at no point does that become a moral discussion.
No, this is the confusion. If the disagreement is over the validity of shared semantic content, then that's a descriptive disagreement. If there's different semantic content associated with the definition, then it's going to go back to, well, what do we actually mean when we're saying these words? What ought we mean when we say these words?
No,
all that really matters is...
No, hold on. You're confused about language. So the fact that you said I'm confused is ironic. You can have the descriptive conversation about the biological status of the fetus, right? And then you can have a conversation about how we should refer to fetuses. Those are two distinct, separate conversations.
The example you brought up was about life, like whether or not we're calling it alive or not. If you're talking with different definitions, then that's no longer an argument about the descriptive facts. It's about, hey, what are we actually referring to? And that's going to get into
that's the same
either
thing.
Disagreement in definitions. No, it's not.
Yeah, well, I'm fine with teaching you a lesson on philosophy of language. So if you're ready, just take out the pen and paper, buddy.
You're totally welcome to do that.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. So
I got the notes app open.
Yeah, so just so you know, when people have disputes, okay, we can do a little lesson on knowledge. That's a really good example. So for many years, philosophers have spent their entire careers trying to figure out what constitutes knowledge. And they haven't done so with necessary and sufficient conditions, by the way. So a lot of people that have disputes over that, it's really difficult. So what they do is they undertake conceptual analysis. As you know, with knowledge, a lot of people accepted justified true belief until Gettier came out with a paper, and we call those Gettier cases, where they're counterexample cases to justified true belief. Okay, so up until this day, I'm strongly agreeing with the fact that there is not a consensus within the philosophical community or even any real agreement on what constitutes knowledge, because the concept has indeterminate cases. They're sort of like vague in nature. Okay, so let's say that you and I are debating on. Yeah, I'm getting there. Well, I had to teach you about language first. I wasn't able to skip to this part. So the part that I'll skip to is
disagreed with anything that I said. So I'm
getting there. Line it up. So I'm making an analogy with knowledge. What I'm saying is, let's say we have a disagreement, but we're not just disagreeing about like necessary and sufficient conditions. We're disagreeing about like the concept entirely. So we're trying to see, okay, well, whose concept, aka the meaning or the intention? I don't know if you use sense reference, intention, extension. Say you're trying to figure out the intention of the word. So the way you do that might be seeing how it maps onto common usage. So you go through a bunch of cases in which people ordinarily use the term. You see if that maps on. That is not talking about any just straight up definitions, right? You're undertaking conceptual analysis, but that's not inherently a moral discussion.
Well, then that's just descriptively asking how people are using the word, which is different about what the definition is in a broader sense.
No, that's not what I'm saying.
You're already assuming.
That's not what I'm saying. You can think that the intention of the word helps map out the extension, but that's not vice versa. So it's not that the extension is the intention, it's vice versa. So if you use sense reference distinction, that goes the same. So the sense of the word is not going to be determined by the reference. The referential theory, at least if you accept that, is not one that's widely accepted.
Sure, I'm confused because either you're misunderstanding what I mean or the conversation being had beforehand that I was commenting on was different than how I understood it. Which
you
it
made a
seemed
comment
to be that
about
Edna was
use.
talking.
You made a comment about use right now.
I made a comment about Yeah, I made a comment about Edna talking about whether or not this conversation has a moral underpinning in nature. And
No, I
it
know, but
seems to
right
be
now you just made a different comment. Right now you just made a comment. Yeah, that's if you're just saying how you use the term. So how you use the term is a part of determining what the concept is, but not entirely.
well, that's what I'm saying is the intention of the person who's using the term, like what is the attached semantic content that they're invoking when they use the term,
Mhm.
needs to be understood in the first place before there's disagreement about the actual descriptive facts going on. If there's
We did.
disagreement
They
and people
did.
aren't, so you established an agreed upon definition then.
No, no, no. I didn't
And
say that they established agreed upon, but they both shared what their semantic goals were. And then that's when I hopped in at some point and I started talking about the truth conditions of those statements being mapped onto common usage.
sure, and the host agreed to adhering to common usage or
So the host was trying to make a claim that there is a sort of colloquial sense of the term woman that's independent of biological sex. The guest below me asked to give any case, and we didn't hear any case that went through. Not even an attempted case.
oh, so they conceded the common usage framing.
Not
Yeah,
totally. They didn't provide an example,
it's
but they didn't
indirect.
concede.
It wasn't like an indirect concession because he's not really giving an answer, but he's still saying that there is this sense of the word. That's where we're at now, and that's why I said it doesn't really make any sense because we keep asking him for the sense of this word in that context, and then he refuses to give it, but says it still exists. So that's why I said I would drop, and then you came up after.
The sense of the word held, well, assuming the sense of the word could just be held by them, which
Yeah, and especially in these discussions, I don't think a lot of people that I've encountered, especially I always clarify, are you just expressing your own semantic goals when you use the term out of the term? They usually, some will say yes, most will say no. They'll say, this is how I think people actually use the term, and that's what they actually mean. And so that's why we ask for cases.
sure, you're saying there's a disconnect between the sense and the usage that they're giving.